So welcome to the Node.js Technical Steering Committee meeting for December 6th, 2023. Before we get started, does anybody have any announcements they'd like to share? Okay, if no announcements, in terms of CPC and board meeting updates, we don't have Mateo, so I don't think there are any board meeting updates. In terms of CPC meeting updates, this week was a working session on the travel fund. So again, that's the working session was working on a proposal. So if you're interested in the travel fund and changes going on there, it might be good to watch that issue or to jump into some of the discussions. Other than that, I don't think there's anything to mention. So I'll move on to the first issue on the agenda, which is lib promote process binding, tick callback to runtime deprecation. I do know we discussed this a little bit last time. And Joey, I think you'd had some suggestions, and I think James had commented that he might have looked at some of those. Is that the same one I was thinking of, or is this a different one?
Yes. I was suggesting to basically follow what Anna suggested maybe 2 years ago or 1 year ago. Because there were another pull request trying to deprecate the process binding, and Anna was basically saying the same thing. That we need a more incremental approach. And I think we were thinking about the same thing, that eventually this should not be deleted. It should be some kind of no-op returning a empty object instead of just deleting it, because that would not help anyone.
Okay.
But yeah, I think James also said in the last meeting that it makes sense to postpone it a bit because this won't go out until April anyway. So before we approach the next similar major release, we can, still try to figure out. We still have some time to figure out if we can still do the incremental approach.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I should call for a vote regarding whether we should just delete it or whether we should do it incrementally, treat the pending process binding, because there are 26 something, 24 bindings. Not all of them are dangerous. Some of them are more used than the others in the ecosystem. So do we need to vote about whether we want to, how are we supposed to do with this? Are we going to deprecate them all, or are we going to deprecate them individually, or are we going to do it incrementally? I think in the thread, there was some consensus about getting a vote. Just not sure if people feel the same way here.
I think if there's a clear question, if there needs to be a vote versus, we're figuring it out still, then I think the key thing in my mind would be what would be the questions on the vote, right?
I guess it would be what would be the plan regarding process binding? For example, the plan in the pull request is runtime deprecated, and then add the flag to turn the deprecation warning off, and then in 22, and then make it deleted by default in 23, but you can revert it with a flag, and then just revert everything and just remove everything in 24. And another plan, I think the plan originally suggested by Anna was to create wrappers, harmless wrappers of all this, and then you just leave them there forever. And my suggestion would be something my plan that I suggested would be something similar. So I guess the question is whether we should have a vote about the different options of plans regarding process binding.
Right, okay. So it sounds like unless if there's people strongly advocating for one versus the other, the one I wasn't sure about, like if the answer is, well, there's time to figure out whether we can do it incrementally or not, that might sound like, that people are open to going that way instead of the other way. If it's more like, no, some people think we should go one way, some people we think should go the other way, then writing those two down as the options and scheduling a vote could make sense.
Okay, I guess I can try to make a vote before the holidays. I guess I'll still need to figure out what the options are, because there can be many different combinations of steps. But yeah, I'll try to at least open a issue in the TSC to see if we really need a vote, or can we just get some sort of like informal consensus regarding the plans over there.
Right. The other, yeah, like and even I think it could be like, I don't know if we have to cover all options, but like a vote could be, do we proceed with this proposal? Or the other option would be like, do we ask for more investigation on doing it incrementally before we proceed, right?
I guess we can like formulate the vote in a way that, what's our end goal? Do we need do we want investigation, and do we want the wrappers? I guess we can like slice the decisions individually and maybe vote on that, or just use emojis, because there are just way too many combinations in the steps. So maybe like trying to decide individually would be a good first step, and then you kind of like put them together as a plan.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it sounds like you plan to open an issue. We'll open TSC issue to gather some info and then, turn that into a vote. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, at least like trying to figure out what possible steps are out there, and then maybe either vote on the steps individually or vote on a plan that combines some of the steps.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, I'll try to get that done before the holidays.
Sounds good. Okay, I'm just trying to put that to the right. Okay, right issue here. Okay, the next one is seeking approval to use the Node.js logo on the Winter CG website. That one I suggest we can just take off the agenda, because I think, there's been discussion on the issue. I don't see any objections. It was on, at least in part, as an FYI. Anybody, think we should keep it on the agenda? I'm just gonna say yes. Take the notes that we can. Okay, the next one is update the meeting time. So that's issue 1469. There's been some discussion back and forth, some different analysis of the different times. I think from the discussion in there, my suggestion is we do 15 and 16, which provides at least a decent coverage for most people. Like, except for maybe Jeffrey, who's said he'd be fine with one of those two. Anybody have concerns, alternate suggestions? I'm just thinking, unless we do, we might just settle on those and move forward. Okay. So I'm just going to say that there weren't any objections in the meeting today, so we'll move forward with that suggestion. Okay, we can move on. So the next one is have a mascot. Again, that's one where I think I've seen some emails just reminding people, collaborators, in terms of, a selection. I don't know that there's anything to discuss for the TSC. So maybe I think this is another one we could remove from the agenda until it comes back to a specific question. Anybody have any alternate thoughts on that one? Okay, just taking the minutes and a note that we agreed to remove from the agenda. The next one is create node.js socket repository for node.js implementation of Cloudflare Socket API. I think there's been a bit of discussion on that, both in the meetings and in the issue itself. I don't know if we've come to a conclusion and we can take it off of the agenda, or what are people's feeling on this one? I know, Joey, you commented last time that it was discussed in the last meeting, which I didn't make. And that the suggestion was it better fit under the Winter CG organization.
Sorry, I was typing on the process binding issue. Was it about the Winter CG? Is it about socket API or?
Yes. Yeah.
I guess we've commented that it would be better for them to host it somewhere else before this is formalized. Oh, and they said that Winter CG does not want to host it either. I guess what happens as far as TC39 proposal goes is that they would just publish it as a proprietary, like just something that's under the namespace of whoever was implemented it. That could also work. Before they move it to anywhere.
Right.
I guess it's the thing lacking from our side is that, as Tobias also mentioned in the issue, I'm not sure if I can speak for him, but my understanding is that we don't know whether because if you take up the socket namespace, we don't know whether this is going to be the socket API. So there is some kind of risks going on there. And it's like we don't know it's ready yet or not. We just don't know, and it would be better to get more signals from Winter CG or from the community before we decide whether this is ready. And Winter CG does not yet have any kind of staging process like the one that TC39 has about, whether this is ready to be implemented, whether this is ready to be shipped, that kind of stages for us to know for sure. So maybe it's a good first step if they are just trying to figure out a place to publish this. My understanding is that they have this, but they have not published it on NPM before. Maybe they can just publish it under their own namespace.
think it was published, possibly, or like, yeah, I don't know if they published it, but it's somewhere in Ethan's GitHub org. But it sounds to me like I haven't heard anybody advocating for actually pulling it in yet. I've mostly heard people like expressing concerns or like it's too early, or, I mean, do we think the consensus is, you know, it's too early, it's not the right, it's too early to pull it in. And, at this point, we could take it off the agenda with that feedback. And, if somebody from the TSC wants to advocate for something else, then it could be added back to the agenda. Does that fit with what people here think would make sense? Or
Yeah, that
something.
Sorry, Joe, you captured my opinion quite well. I do not think we should reserve the socket repository name as long as Ethan has published it to NPM and on his own GitHub. He refers to it there as the Cloudflare socket API. So even there, it doesn't really say it's the socket API. And yeah, I'd be probably fine if someone has a reason to put it into the node org with a more specific name that doesn't really take that significant keyword away from us. But yeah, so far I don't really see a reason to pull it into the org.
okay, so unless anybody here, has thinks we should do something else, I'll take the minutes. It says, Michael proposed we remove from the agenda, add feedback to the issue that we believe consensus is that it's too early to consider pulling it out of the org. Please re-add to the agenda if you want to advocate otherwise or something like that.
Or maybe we can try to get some more positive signals from Winter CG. I'm not sure how that works in their venue, but if there were like, giving some kind of like stage 3 in terms of TC39 signals, I think that would kind of like a signal that kind of like tells you is kind of ready to be or like the API is not going to go through significant changes, then it might be ready, but we just don't know. Or like there is no like clear signals from Winter CG even.
Right, okay, so I can add in, I'll just craft what I'm going to write. I can say, we discussed the TSC in the TSC meeting today and agreed to remove from the agenda the consensus. Yes, to be that. It's too early to take namespace pull in. If there were more signals from Winter CG, that might help to re-add to the agenda. So I'm going to say, we discussed in the TS meeting today and agreed to remove from the agenda. The consensus seems to be that it's too early to take the namespace pull in to node.js org. If there are more signals from Winter CG, that might help. Please re-add to the agenda, to TSC agenda if you feel we should discuss further. That makes sense to everybody? Okay, I'm assuming silence is no objections to that, so I just went ahead and did that. Okay, so we can move on to the next one, which is Events Collaborator Summits for 2024. I did take the action a couple of weeks ago to send out an email to find people who were interested in participating. most of the discussion there has been about a proposal that Matteo and Joyu have been talking about. I don't think I've seen too many other people chime in saying that they were interested. So I don't know, Joy, if we should talk about anything on that proposal or just leave that to the thread.
I guess we just need to decide the when and the where. And how many people are we expecting? That's currently what we will need to confirm, because we will need to secure the space. And other than that, other decisions can be done later, because they're not, something that you need to do preferably in advance, in case you don't get enough space, or like
Right.
don't get the right space at the right time. So if you have any concerns about the proposed dates, should we talk about it in public? I think we can talk about it in public. The proposed dates are April 3rd to 4th before CityJS London. So that will be Wednesday and Thursday. And we'll plan to have kind of like a 30 to 40 people, a room that can accommodate 30 to 40 people, and then maybe a breakout room that can accommodate maybe 10 to 20 people. And that hopefully will be enough for everyone. And it will be in London, of course, because we're co-locating it with CityJS London. So just trying to see if there are any concerns about these points. Otherwise, we'll try to move forward with this proposal and try to secure the space first.
Certainly sounds reasonable to me. And I think, like, the numbers based on, past recent ones, that's a good starting point. And if we ended up getting way more, then we would know for the next time that, we would need to change something. But I think for me, it seems like a good way to start.
Okay, I guess we can move on from this meeting. If you have any other questions, you can raise it in the thread.
I would say that the other thing to discuss maybe is, like, is there a second one? We've often done two a year. So this would be good to lock in this one. The next thing to think about is, like, if you know of any, other conferences. This one would be in Europe. So, maybe if there was one in North America, if there's a conference or something, that's the other part that we could start to think of after we get this one planned out.
Yeah, maybe in the second half of the year, preferably if we are having one in Europe in the first half of the year.
Yeah.
So if anyone is in contact with some JavaScript related conferences, or like conferences that people, for example, our collaborators would already be interested in joining, then feel free to propose something and see if we can get some volunteer to organize that.
Okay. So at this point, I'll move on to the strategic initiatives. Let me find that list. Okay. Antoine, anything you want to add on the core promise APIs?
No, there hasn't been much progress. I'm not sure the initiative makes a lot of sense to keep alive, because the only part that lacks promise API would be child process, but it's unclear if we'll be able to make an API for that, which would make sense. Yeah, just throwing it out there.
Okay, so that's the only one that's left, and not sure if it actually makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you think it's effectively done, then, you know, retiring it as a strategic initiative probably makes sense.
Well, I guess it's a formal call for volunteers before we close it, because if someone does come up with an API, that would be awesome. But yeah, it's unclear if it's actually possible.
Capturing that in the minutes and. Okay, the next one, I think, Joey, startup snapshot.
So there is a pull request to configure the snapshot. For now, the configuration are limited to whether the code cache should be included, and you can also specify the builder script in the configuration. I think we'll add more configuration as we go. So that still has not received a code review yet. It was suggested by Anna, but she's probably busy, so she has not got around to the reviewing yet. If anyone else want to review, that would be very helpful. I'll paste the link into the documentation, into the meeting doc.
Sounds good. And on the next 10, I don't think I don't have any updates to discuss. I think that takes us to the end of the ones that we have people here. If I missed somebody who's here on the list, just jump in. Okay, so that takes us to the end of the list of the agenda. Anything else we should chat about before we close out for this week? Let me just make sure. I'm missing one person from the attendance. Okay. So just give me 1 sec before I close out the meeting. People start leaving to make sure I've got everybody. Maybe I count her 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, I got 9 and there's 10 of us. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, well, thanks for everybody's time, and we'll see everybody in GitHub and next time. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
Bye.